Here's some tips for the firmware 2.01 of the Stillson Hammer MKII 4-track sequencer from Industrial Music Electronics, formerly known as the Harvestman. We will quickly go over the new features of this firmware and try to learn some tricks along the way. This tutorial will only review the new stuff of this firmware, so if you need to learn all the basics of the module, I highly suggest you to watch the firmware 1.666 tutorial, if you have not already. And you might want to check out how to update the firmware too. So, just click on the link and enjoy my annoying voice, as I show you every details of this amazing sequencing module. Okay, let's check out those new firmware goodies. Brownian walk. The Stillson Hammer now offers a new transport mode, the Brownian walk. Let's generate a random sequence on track 1. Now we need to go to the transport mode page by pushing the middle button of the transport section. Scroll through forward mode, pendulum mode, random mode, and now there's the Brownian walk mode. The Brownian walk mode, or random walk mode, offers an equal chance for the sequencer to move forward or backward. It's a new way to use some randomness into your patch, without being too chaotic. Sequence rotation. The sequence rotation feature lets you offset the tracks between them. For this patch, we will use 2 oscillators, and each one will go in a separate speaker, so we will hear clearly when one will offset the other. Let's generate a random sequence and copy-paste to another track, so each one will be identical. You can access sequence rotation by pushing the middle button of the transport section until the letter R shows in the display. Setting this number with the rotary encoder will cause the playback position of the track to be shifted forward in relation to the other tracks. A second LED in the slider bank will be dimly lit, showing the actual memory position of the rotated track. So the brighter LED shows the position it would have without any rotation. You can combine the track rotation features with any transport mode. Let's try random mode for instance. Take careful note of the dim slider when editing the track's parameter. The sequence rotation feature is simple and yet it can bring a lot to your sequence creativity. Try experimenting with any functions you already learned. Step repeat. Working a bit differently than the burst function, the step repeat features will let you repeat the current step for a specific number of times. Let's unmute this track and try some step repeat on it. To access the step repeat page, hold down the shift button and press the delay page button. The delay button should light orange and the step repeat page will be active. Pushing the rotary encoder will show the active gates, and it will be easier for you to find the specific step you want to edit its repetition. The step repetition will also work with any other transport mode. And you can also combine this extended parameter with the assignable controllers for some performance madness. Here's a personal trick with the step repeat function. Let's quickly create a sequence. Adding some random gates here and there. Applying random CV values. Enter the step repeat page by holding the shift button while pushing the delay button. When you hold down the rotary encoder, you'll see each gates of the sequence. But if you add some repetition where there's no gates, this will act like you augment the step length. All the rhythmic in this patch is based on clock division of the main clock out using the Synthy biscuit. So it's relatively simple, but on complex patches, I highly suggest using the reset input if you need to sync everything right. Otherwise, you'll have to do your maths of calculating each steps you entered. Probability. Gate probability. To access the gate probability page, hold down the shift button and press the gate page button. The gate button should light orange and the gate probability page will be active. Now the slider determines the probability at which the gate will fire. When the slider is at the bottom, the gate will always fire. When the gate is at the middle position, there is a 50% chance that the gate will fire. And when the slider is at the top, there is no chance that the gate will fire. The gate probability will also affect any step repeat you programmed. You'll also be able to use the assignable controllers to this extended parameter. Burst probability. It is now possible to set some probability to your burst with this new feature. Let's only make one step with a burst so it will be easier to explain. The burst will have enough count value to fill the whole loop. Okay, it's good enough, alright. To access the probability burst page, hold the shift button and press the count page. The count button should light orange when the page is active. This extended parameter works similarly to the gate probability. It will only remove gates that are generated as part of a retriggering burst. When the slider is at the top, less chance for the burst to be triggered. Adjusting the decay of the envelope of the Synthy biscuit. This extended parameter can also be combined with the other functions and with the assignable controllers. Slave CV. You can now set the CV output of a track to be updated only when a gate is performed. If the envelope's decay is too long, you might hear the other steps affecting your parameters even if no gate is active at those steps. Using the Synthy biscuit to control the envelope of the double AND/OR, we can hear the pitch shifting as the sequence moves forward. By pushing the CV button while holding the shift button, you'll enable the slave CV feature. The shift button will illuminate when the slave CV is active on that track. Although it may sound cool without the slave CV, but you can now choose between those options. Remember kids, Shift plus the CV button to enable or disable this feature. Subtle random. The Stillson Hammer offers some nice and quick ways to generate some random sequence and to apply some randomness to any of the parameters. But if you hold down the init and random button while pushing the track button or the CV page, you apply a subtle randomization of the CV values within a narrow range. You can keep doing a subtle randomization until it fits your expectations. This new way to randomize can only be applied on the CV page values. So don't bother trying this on every parameter of the module. I already did. I personally like this feature when I want to store quickly some variations of an existing sequence on different preset locations. Speaking of preset storage, let's check out what's new in there. CV memory control. The jack in the memory section was used for external CV recording, but now it is used for loading stored presets from the memory. But before you save any of your Stillson Hammer sequencing, keep in mind that some parameters will clearly affect the way it will operate when reloading a new preset. First of all, the track number 1 is the master track, and the time a loaded sequence will start to run depends on it. The memory CV input accepts voltage from 0 to 5 volt, so the pressure points will work perfectly alongside. When the input receives some signals, the intended preset number will be shown on the display. Voltages from 0 to 4.32 volts will select a specific preset number to load at the end of each sequences. When the track 1 is in forward mode, the next preset will be loaded at its last step. In pendulum mode, the next preset will be loaded when it comes back to step number 1. Now the preset is in random mode. When in random mode, the next preset will load immediately. So plan your creations wisely, cause you might miss some notes on other tracks. The Brownian waltz needs to go back all the way to the first step too. But it might unpredictably run forever before this happens. I personally like to stick with forward mode for track number 1 and play with the sequence length and track division. Voltages between 4.32 and 5 volt will decrement from 1 the actual running preset, and voltages of 5 volt and over will increment from 1. Let's let the sequencer running a bit with the stored preset. Presets in random mode will only play one step, as you can see. Industrial music electronics highly recommend using a CV keyboard to control this input. But you might want to send an LFO or any random CV. But be aware of the master track 1 and its capricious behaviors. So, the parameters to understand are transport modes, clock divisions, and the quantity of steps of the total sequence of track number 1. Well, I think we reviewed every new features of Firmware 2.01. I hope it was useful and will help you along your sequencing. And remember kids, I'm doing this because I love you. I'm programmed that way, to share the love, and love is all we need. And the need of love is important for me, so I can keep doing this because I love you. I'm programmed that way, to share the love, and love is all we need. And the need of love is important for me, so I can keep doing this because I love you. I'm programmed that way, to share the love, and love is all we need. And the need of love is important for me.